good evening. Hey, beautifuls. Thank you for joining me on tonight's edition of A Beautiful Life. I am joined with none other than the beautiful Alicia Johnson of the 1212 community. Thank you, Alicia, for joining me.
Thank
Um,
you.
Tonight, I want to talk about growing through the discomfort, right? Seeing beautiful in the storm. Tonight, I want to kind of shift the mindsets on when we're in a trial, when we're in the thick of the storm, right? We are always looking for the easy way out, right? We want that instant relief because we don't want to feel the pressure, we don't want to feel the discomfort. But think about it this way, right? That in the midst of the storm, in the midst of that trial, there's something to learn. There's a lesson on beautiful, right? Of being able to see no matter what it looks like, even in this, there is still beautiful, right? So I just want to shift our perspective a little bit. So when we think about the storms, as I said, we're always looking for the easy way out, right? We want to
Mm,
say, God, okay, why is this happening to me? Why am I going through that? But let's take a pause, right?
mhm,
While we're in the midst of it and acknowledge what we're going through. Because sometimes, I don't know about y'all, but for me, my default is setting is kind of ignore and override. Like, I don't want to feel it. But I understand from going through some storms, right? I'm building my muscle here that you have to, or that we have to be present in the moment, feel what we feel, process what we are feeling, identify maybe some triggers that we have, um, maybe acknowledge some limiting beliefs that we have been carrying with us. And so it's really when we're in the midst of the storm to be able to grow through it,
mhm.
right? We have to not check out, which is it's easy. Telling y'all from my perspective, it's easy to check out because you don't want to feel that pain. You don't want to feel that discomfort. Um, and honestly, we don't want to be vulnerable, right? And figuring out, okay, God, what's happening? What's taking place? Like, do we really honestly check in with God when we're in the midst of it? Or are we our prayers saying, God, get me out?
Mm,
Alicia, what's
mm.
been your default setting when you're in the midst of that storm? When you're in the eye of the storm, what's it been like for you?
I would say before I started operating in a God made progression, um, I wanted to, like you were saying, get out as quickly as possible. So when you're operating from a man-made perspective, and what I mean by man-made perspective is operating like the world does.
Mhm.
And no one in the world wants to experience pain. No one wants to be inconvenienced. No one wants to be offended. And so we spend so much time trying to avoid all of it. And when I started to operate from a God made progression, and what I mean by God made progression is learning and appreciating that everything that crosses my path has been approved by God.
Mm.
And once I accepted the fact that nothing gets to me without heaven's stamp of approval, I became okay with it. But prior to that, I was constantly asking myself, what did I do wrong? Why did this happen? And you like trying to trace back your steps. Like if I had done this way, then maybe this would have happened differently. But not truly understanding that God knows the plan for each and every one of us. And we are assured that trouble will come.
Mhm.
The Bible teaches us that trouble will come, but be excited, be of good cheer, be happy because all of that has been overcome. But it takes a minute to get to that place. It ain't easy. It's not easy.
Yeah,
So
we want to.
don't let me like sugarcoat it for you. It's not easy. So I hope that that kind of answered what.
It does. When you talk about that, right, we skip over those scriptures, right? Because we like, I don't wanna learn this. I don't wanna go through that. But I wanna go back to what you said, how God has to give his stamp of approval. Because
Mhm.
a lot of times, right, we are quick, oh, the devil busy today,
It's not
right?
always the
It's
devil.
not that right, and I think that's the perception that we had to shift, in that they the devil, right, the enemy, our
Mhm.
frenemies, like some people are called, those
Mhm.
people, they gotta get that approval first. Like, not my anointed, is that what the scripture said? I
Mhm.
don't know the scriptures all
Touch
by
not
now.
thy anointed and do thy servant no harm. It's a whole bunch before and after that, but that's the part that I like the most.
Right,
You
but
just pull out the part that you want to use,
the
but
part you gonna use, and
it's
then the
much
more.
deeper than that. But
Yeah,
yeah.
you need the context before and after, and sometimes everything else comes. But that's the part I think we ignore and don't see, because when we're in the midst of it, who wants to say, well, why is God allowing this? Right? We question God and saying, God, why me? Why
Mhm.
am I going through this? But that's
Mhm.
where the perception, the shift has to take place, in that, okay, no more woe is me. Now say, why not me? Right? So you understand, I've been equipped, I've been called, I know that I have the strength, I'm developing the faith muscle, right? That resilience, that perseverance, because even in the midst of it, there's still beautiful in it. There's
Mhm.
something beautiful in that moment. And trust me, dark and light can coexist at the same time, right?
Mhm.
We just have to understand that, okay, in the darkness, that light needs to shine a little bit more.
Mhm.
And you do that by defining your beautiful and understanding, okay, what does my beautiful look like? Because that becomes the anchor that we need to be able to continue standing. So now, instead of us trying to get through the situation, we can now grow through the situation, because there's some things, right, that God needs us to understand. Maybe this is a faith test, right? A faith walk. I'm testing, that's my testimony right now. This is not what I'm doing right now, is nothing but a faith walk,
Mhm.
because the lesson that we got to get is really, ultimately, do we trust God in the midst of the storm? Like, I was reading a devotional, and it was talking about, our prayers, when we going through that storm, we sending some heavy prayers, right? But
Mhm.
when things are good, we're not praying as hard.
Mhm.
And so
Mhm.
it's understanding that, okay, the same prayers we've been praying when we're going through it need to be the same prayers that we send when everything is good, when everything is smooth sailing, because this process is creating the resilience for us. So,
Mhm.
what does resilience look like for you?
I kind of want to piggyback off of what you just said about the prayer piece.
Hmm.
I know when God was dealing with me, I was on the metro and I was sitting at the seat closest to like the fire extinguisher. And it was like God was like, most people pray like break glass in case of emergency prayers.
Oh,
Like we pray when like the fire's hot. Like we pray when we how can I put it? When things are dire, and when we are able to actually learn our lessons incrementally, it's easier to take. And so I just wanted to double back on that. But what was the question that I want to make sure I stay on topic with the
oh no, you're
question?
good. What does resilience look like
Oh,
to you? For
okay.
you?
So resilience for me looks like the thing that I teach the most, which is don't quit. Don't quit. If you can get through to the end, then you are going to build your resilience up like no other, because from the beginning or the onset of the problem until the solution appears, you're going to have to be resilient through the entire process.
Mhm.
And like my big mama used to say, you want to see what the end is going to be. Like you want to stick with it long enough, and God had to show me that my resilience, if you will, was very low because I would quit too many things.
Wow.
I would quit just before it got good. Like I would quit like by the time I figured it out in my mind, I already had an exit. I'm going to quit the job. I'm going to leave the relationship. I'm going to move. I'm going to whatever it was. It was like in school, everything. This class is too hard. I'm going to drop it. I don't want to do this. I'm going to stop. And God was like, you are literally not going to get anywhere in life if you are collecting loose ends. Like my whole life was just a bunch of loose ends. They weren't tied to anything. And so when I started tying a string to everything that I was doing, then it was almost like God was showing me the proverbial ladder that I was building.
Wow.
But with all of those loose ends, you don't have anything to hold on to. You don't have anything to connect. And the problem with that is that heaven does things strategically. And when you forego the opportunity to handle the small inconveniences well, when the big things come, you really gonna fold. Like right now, that's why I'm like kind of perplexed, like with everything going on in our life. This is the calmest I have ever been. And
Wow.
it that peace that surpasses all understanding, that thing is real.
Mhm.
I can't even explain this. Like the work that we're doing now, the work that we're doing in the community, my day gig, we just had a major conference. We had life happens. I'm just sitting up here under normal circumstances. I would have shut it all down. I've been like, look, everybody's getting a refund, no conference. The community, we're going to put it on hiatus. We all just, so resilience impresses you. Like when you start to be resilient, you can't brag about it, you can't talk about it because you just like confused yourself. I don't even people are like, well, how do you do all I have no idea.
Yep.
I have no, it's it's the internal. This is how I can tell when people are faking it because they talk too much. Because when you're actually going through it, you are just as amazed as everybody else.
Yeah, for I'm a recovering quitter, right?
Yay!
Because when you say don't quit another thing, like every time I'm in a situation, I can hear you in my ear saying, don't quit another thing. Don't quit another thing. And it gave me the push to be able to continue going through, regardless of whether the family is in dysfunction, the job is in dysfunction, like the dog, like everything, right? Because if you understand that, okay, I'm at this mountain, I'm in this storm, I'm in the eye of it, but I this is just a new mountain, right? I've had plenty of mountains in my past before that I felt the same way that God, there's no way I'm gonna be able to get through this. But you ride that thing out and you got through it. So I'm like, this is no different. We all think the situations that we're facing right now. God, I really don't have the strength to do that. Well, honey, you said that 10 years ago when you was going through the divorce, So it's the same God that got us through that storm 10 years ago is the same God that's going to get us through this
Amen.
storm, right?
Amen.
And it's just a matter of sitting, getting still, putting the phone on mute, putting the emails on mute, putting whatever we need to do to get still and quiet the chaos that exists in our mind. Because our
Mhm.
mind is trying to figure out, how can I get out of this? Right? How can I control the situation? Where's my way out? Like I'm in an escape room. That's how it feels, right? When you try, they trying to give you clues and you looking for all the signs. Well, if God, I just need you to confirm this. You see a post on social media, that's it right there. Then you get something else that cross your path. Oh, that wasn't it after all. Right. And so then you back in that escape room trying to figure it out. When God is just like, beautiful, just sit still, sit down, stop trying to do it all, release, surrender it to be able to get through. And that's where, when we talk about the resilience, like growing through the storm, growing through the trial, that does
Mhm.
nothing but build our faith muscle,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
It pushes us to the point of we've got to face the fears,
Mhm.
right? The
Mhm.
fears that we keep in our mind,
Mhm.
the fears that we make up. Like we come up with all kind of stuff. You know what? I'm scared of the dark today. Never been scared of the dark. You create
Mhm.
this fear, but
Mhm.
you got to think about, like, I went to the University of Maryland, right? So it's the Terps, and there was this saying, "Fear the turtle." It's the same. Like you got to think about it. Face the fear,
Mhm.
because the only way you're gonna be able to get through it is by understanding. Okay, this too shall pass, like you talked about.
And I know, I don't know if you're familiar with the works of Byron Katie. I
Oh,
love her. She's amazing. So, I was listening to one of her stories, and she had this woman that was overwhelmed with so many things, and she was afraid to let everything go because she didn't want to just see things just fall apart. She didn't, she felt like she was the glue that was holding her family together, so she was afraid to let go of everything and not control everything. And so one of the exercises that Byron Katie gave her was to go across the street from her house and sit on the sidewalk. Like, just sit there and imagine her entire house burning down. Like,
wow.
nobody got injured. She was able to take out all of the valuables, all of the things that she wanted, but just imagine the house just burning to a crispy cinder. And so the point of the exercise was is that as she was watching it burn down, like, what were her feelings? Like, what did she, and she was like, she felt so relieved, like, I don't have to pay the mortgage anymore. The insurance would take care
Wow.
of that. Everyone's safe. Now I don't have to worry about, now everyone's, because she was like, these were adult people living with her, like her adult kids. Now everyone's gonna have to find their own home. Everyone's gonna have to, and it was so funny. And so the point was is that sometimes the most devastating event can be the most liberating if you have the right perspective.
Yes. Yep.
If you have the right perspective.
It's what you said in that story is she had to sit down and process
Hmm.
and deal with the feelings, because who wants to feel like, who feel the fire? Like, who wants to feel that? But if we can take that moment and take that pause and really acknowledge and come to God as real and as raw as you can,
Right.
and say, God, this is what I feel. This is what I know. This is what I believe. And allow Him to start talking to you and giving you the peace and the comfort. Like, think of, when they talk about when you're in a storm, right? We're always looking for the rainbow. But
Mm-hmm.
when's the last time you really sat and enjoyed the waterfall that's coming down
Mm-hmm.
during that? Like, how refreshing it is, how soothing the raindrop. Now, it can get a little cold, so ignore that part of it. But when you think about, just like, if you're in your shower and you just let the water roll off of you, and the comfort and the peace, that's how we have to be in the storm.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
understanding that, okay, yes, I'm looking for the rainbow, God, but in the moment that I'm in this, let
Mm-hmm.
me bask in your glory. Let me bask in your peace. Let me bask in the trust that I have to have. Because when I can do that, then I'm growing through the storm versus just trying to go through and rush the process. Because if we try and rush it, we never get the lesson that we're supposed to learn. And then the next thing you know, a month from now, we're facing that same situation again because we didn't get the lesson the first time.
And when
But
you I'm sorry to cut
Go
you off.
ahead, go ahead.
When you prolong the assignment, like it takes longer to get through the process. Like when you lean into it and you accept the part that you play, all you can do is take care of your part. There's a
Mhm.
part for you to do, there's a part for others to do, and there's a part for heaven to do. When you literally take full responsibility for the part that you have played in the scenario,
That part.
then that relieves you of the consequences.
Mhm.
And what I mean by that is, it's like, for example, if you're miserable on your job, and this is personal, this is something that God had to deal with me on. Prior to this gig, the other gig that I had, oh, it was like, oh, it's just too much work. It's too much this. I can't believe this. They always asking, and I was a mess. And when God, this exercise, growing through the discomfort, God was like, every uncomfortable area that you have, just in this position here, you're the common denominator.
Mm.
You created it. And I'm like, I didn't. They keep piling this stuff on. I was arguing. Shoot, I was defending my my deficiencies. I was like, no, that's not right. They just keep piling. And God was like, the only reason they can pile it on is because you didn't do what you were supposed to do at the time you were supposed to do it.
Mhm.
Because, see, I had a tendency to prioritize in the way that I wanted to prioritize, not in the way that God was telling me to do things, and not in the way that even my bosses were telling me to do things. I knew how to do it, I was going to do it my way. So, in my arrogance, I'm creating more work for myself.
Yeah.
And it was a very humbling experience. But the beautiful part is that when you surrender and you honestly admit the error of your ways, heaven will like just put you under heaven's wing, or just embrace you and hide you from everything that could destroy you. And there was this one document, I'll never forget this. I've shared this story before, but there was a document that needed to be sent to the client. I didn't complete the document, and because it wasn't completed, I obviously didn't send it to the client. So it's sitting on, I knew exactly where it was in the stack on my desk. So the attorney came to my desk and was like, the client is on the phone, and he's enraged because he didn't receive the document. Whew. And God, in my spirit, God's like, say nothing, say nothing, say nothing, say nothing. You will incriminate yourself. Say nothing. I'm just sitting there listening, like, hmm. That's all I kept saying. Okay, okay. And then he was talking so fast that I didn't get a word in edgewise, which was good. So he went back to his office, and I'm sitting there like, okay, God, I know exactly. Because I pulled a little form. I said, it's right here. It's not complete. And I stuck it back in there. And God said, like, I could feel God saying, like, have you learned your lesson? Like, do you understand how this could have gone? This is how heaven, that ram in the bush, or whatever you want to call it, it was just so powerful. The attorney came back and said, I'm emailing you another copy. Can you just complete it and send it to him immediately? Oh, yeah, sure, I can do that. I had all of the information. It was just a matter of putting it on the form. What happened was that the guy, the attorney that was calling, was obviously more dysfunctional than me. So his secretary went in and opened his door, and she said, it's probably in this pile of junk in his office. She's like, you don't pay me enough to look for it. Just have them redo the form. That's how I got out of that. But I knew personally that I was the reason for that. And God knew it too. But because I went in a posture of humility, I knew I was wrong. But you've got to move through the discomfort and allow heaven to reveal all of those things that you've done wrong and admit it. Yeah,
Yes.
I sure. And from that day on, that was the day that God was teaching me to like start to get my stuff together.
That is so good because when we are, acknowledging our part in it, right? That's when the freedom comes in. That's when the burden gets lifted. But we also have to be careful with um, understanding and that only take responsibility for our part and not the part of somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Because when sometimes when we're in a situation and we thinking, well, if they just had done this, da da da, da, then now you are that extra burden, the extra, you're looking for relief for something you didn't even have anything to do with. Like if you've suffered some type of trauma, you sit and you try and blame, like, well, what did I do wrong? Like, what could I have done differently? And so we're always trying to find the answer when it was never our burden to begin with. And that's when it's important to give ourselves the self-compassion
Mm-hmm.
and the self-care and the
Mm-hmm.
forgiveness
And grace.
and
Yep.
the grace and the grace.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
Exactly.
for me, I know what has helped me do that. There was a comment that talked about being thankful for in the storm. Like gratitude is a big attitude shifter, perspective shifter. Like if you are in a place of gratitude at all times, then you can say, even in this, there is still beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Because you know that, okay, I'm feeling it. I'm being pulled. I feel like I'm being dragged through the mud. But God, I know that they're still beautiful. I know that in the end you're gonna still get the glory. I may be feeling it, but I trust and believe you so that my testimony will be even in this, there is still beautiful.
And see, in that finding gratitude and being thankful, you have really got to stretch yourself, because like for us right now, like when you, like with illness, with death, with all of these things, like major heavy hitting events, see, it's easy to say, to be grateful for, I'm grateful for food, I'm grateful for lights, I'm grateful for this. But when you're in a place where it's not the basic necessities that you're facing, it's like life or death situations that you're facing, to be able to be thankful in those situations,
Mhm.
that's a whole nother ballpark.
Yep.
And it's like you really have to, like, this is where like God started to like deal with me on that, like especially with like death and with chronic illness and stuff like that. It's so soothing when you kind of put it all in perspective and you know that everyone has a gift. And the only way an oncologist can practice his or her gift and share their gift of healing is if someone is sick.
Yep.
The only way that an emergency responder can show compassion is if there are emergencies to respond to. And so, as hard as it is to fathom and to wrap our brains around those things, heaven has everyone's assignment calculated. But it takes great imagination to really connect those dots.
Yes. Yep.
And that was like, for me, like, people that know me and kind of my personality, I'm not a very materialistic person. And I was like, I don't understand why people need the Maseratis, and I don't understand. God was like, I gave someone a passion to create the Maserati.
Yeah.
So, in order for that person to fulfill the assignment that I have given them, then someone has to have the desire to want the Maserati. That's just not for you. It doesn't mean that it shouldn't exist. It just means that It's not for you, but it is for someone because God wastes nothing.
That's the part where the shift in perspective comes in, because if we can understand that growth process, the transformation of that, how it is, like, that's the lesson. Like, it may not be for you, but it is somebody else's. We get to evolve
Right.
because we're not worried about somebody else's desire for that. That's not my desire. But this is my desire. And
Right.
you go from there, and that's how you get to grow and how you learn
Mm-hmm.
and discover your own strengths. Discover the things that you do and you don't like. Like, when's the last time you really sat down and said, I don't like this?
Mm-hmm.
Or this is what I like.
Today at lunchtime, I did. I did. Just about 6, 7 hours ago, I did that.
But how long did it take you to get to that point where you could say you didn't like it?
Yeah, yeah, it takes a while. It
Right.
takes a while because we are, and this is how I learned that there's no competition in God's economy.
Yes.
There's only competition when you're out of your lane.
Mhm.
When you are literally in the lane, operating in the plan that God has given you, it I have no competition. There is no one who's going to get up and do the work the way that I do, at the time that I do it, in the way that I do it, in the capacity that I do it at this point in my life. So as long as I stay in my lane, I'm good. But when I get out and get into other areas, so every this is why I have a problem with trends.
Mm.
Trends will make you very uncomfortable. And trends will make you feel that you're losing at a game that you were never designed to play. Everyone is not meant to be a motivational speaker. Everyone is not meant to be an author. Everyone is not meant to be in real estate. Everyone is not meant, whatever the hot ticket this is the going thing right now, so I'm gonna jump on this. I'm gonna do that. Well, what happens when that trend fades?
Right.
Now you got to reinvent yourself all over again. That's uncomfortable.
Right.
A lot of times we are uncomfortable unnecessarily. I've spent a lot of my time being uncomfortable because I was just doing the wrong thing. Doing the wrong thing.
That is, we have to get to a point where we can be comfortable being uncomfortable, right? Because when we are walking in our assignment, when we're walking in our beautiful and truly being authentically who we have been created to be, then our light, our beautiful, will make someone else uncomfortable. And
Mm-hmm.
you got a choice to make. Are you going to dim your light to fit in? Or you going to turn the light up even more, right? To outshine them and be like, you know what? God created me this way. You going to either take it or you don't. You leave it, or you take me, or leave it as it is.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the thing, that comparison trap.
Oh my God. That right there, it's like I laugh, but in my mind, really, everyone in my mind loves Alicia Johnson. Whether or not that's true or not, I don't have the energy to figure out if you like me or not. My days are not going to be wasted. I wasted too much time trying to be a people pleaser.
Yes.
So at this point in my life, everybody loves Alicia Johnson. I've got some emails and text messages to prove otherwise, but
Not the
I can
receipt.
see the love. I can see the love in between the words. Like, but you have to be so excited about who God has created you to be that you have to realize that if people don't like you, if people don't receive you the way that you would like to be received, they just don't know enough about you yet.
Yeah.
That's it. That's all. You
That
don't stop doing anything that God has given you to do because of man. Don't do it.
you can't, because listen, he's shaking things up. You think, okay, you think you uncomfortable now, right? When he light that fire and he like, listen, you didn't hit you bumped your head. You ain't hit me the first time. So he turned that heat up and now you sitting in the fire like, oh, I feel like some popcorn about to explode. But
Mm-hmm.
that's when it becomes key in celebrating our growth.
Mm-hmm.
Celebrating.
Somebody says shine even if they go blind. I like that
I
one.
know that's right.
Hey everybody, I'm trying to read through the comments.
Stay in your lane. Yep, stay in your lane. But that's the thing. It's like we think that we've got to wait until we get through the storm to celebrate. No, celebrate the small things right now. Celebrate that you ain't lost your mind yet.
And even if you do lose your mind, honey, I was celebrating in the psych ward. Okay, that's when I knew I had turned a corner. I'm like, either I'm really crazy or I'm really delivered. One of the two. It's like one of the
Yep.
two. But it was at that point that I realized all I can be is me. And that was so powerful for me because when heaven is releasing you from the holes of the world, it's going to make you crazy before it sets you free.
Wow.
Because
Wow.
heaven has to detach you from everything. And when heaven detaches you, heaven also prepares you. And when heaven prepared me, I saw it all. Like you can see stuff in 2020 when God sits you down. And prior to my breakdown, God had me to memorize all of the life path and gear cycle information, all of it.
Mm.
Because God was like, I need you to understand the truth of who you are, and you can be that person no matter what the scenario. And when heaven locked me away, I couldn't get out. The doors were locked. I couldn't have it. I didn't have any of my materials or anything, but it was in me. There's no competition when you're working from the inside out.
That's right. That's the peeling back of those layers
Yeah.
that we've been hiding behind. It's removing the mask when nobody's watching, right? That's how we get to be us and unleash the beautiful by celebrating the small things, celebrating. I didn't have to curse nobody out today, right? I had to, yes,
Okay.
celebrate the
One day
little
at a
things,
time. One day at a time.
one day at a time. But that's when I think if we can say, okay, even in the midst of the storm, I can still celebrate myself. I can
Mm-hmm.
still throw myself a party. It's like celebrate good time. Change the narrative. Celebrate the bad times. Celebrate, whatever it is. Like
Mm-hmm.
celebrate what you're going through,
Mm-hmm.
because there's the lesson,
Mm-hmm.
there's the growth,
Mm-hmm.
there's the evolution that we're
Mm-hmm.
going through. There's the, we can flex, right? We can we build in our muscle
Mm-hmm.
so that the next time we're facing a situation, we've learned a little bit more, right?
Mm-hmm.
We've discovered a little bit more of who we are. And
Mm-hmm.
so now when you're in another storm, it might be a category 3 versus a 7. And
Mm-hmm.
so we just rock a little bit versus being thrown all over the place, right? So that's what growing through the storm is all about.
And honey, and sometimes, like when you become seasoned, we'll say seasoned. When you become seasoned, you don't even acknowledge the storms.
Wow.
You don't even acknowledge the storms. You know, like I was like, I ain't gonna never say that again. People be like, you either going into a storm or coming out of one. I'm like, the devil is a lot. Nope. Like, I just keep imagining Jesus in that boat.
Yeah.
They had to wake Jesus up to let him know that the storm was happening. Jesus was smooth knocked out. And they were like, this isn't bothering you. This is, I know he's like, what are y'all doing? That's like some of the best sleep. Have you ever really slept through a storm? You know when that
It could
rain's
be.
hitting the water, the water's hitting the pane, and then it's not too much thunder, it's just enough, and that's some good sleep right there.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
When you are able to not even acknowledge the storm, that's powerful.
That is. And then with that, right, your testimony gets to be the testimony for someone else. So they're like, how did you get through that? And your response is nobody but God. Then they're like, okay, tell me who that, tell me about that. And then now you get to have that conversation on what it looks like to
Mhm.
be able to weather the storm, because it's kind of like I bounce back from that.
Mhm. And you
Right.
can
So
get excited.
right.
When the storm happens, you can get excited, like, oh, I can't wait till I get to the other side of this, because this is gonna be bring it. Let's see what's gonna happen. Lord, what that's my
Yep.
thing. God, what you gonna do with this? Like, how you gonna weave this all into everything for my good? How is this
Mhm.
supposed to work out?
Yes.
Be excited. Nothing confuses you, and nothing confuses the enemy more than laughter.
That part.
I would laugh at some things. I be confusing myself sometimes. I'll be like, girl, you know that ain't even funny. But it is kind of funny. It is. And the enemy is just as confused as I am. Because I'm like,
Mhm.
I should not be laughing at this. This is not funny. But joy comes from the Lord. I
Mhm.
mean, joy is a good thing. Be joyful in everything. Be so joyful that it confuses you. And that's how you know you're going to get to the other side even faster, because you're not allowing that situation to overtake you. It overtakes you when you take it too seriously. But when you find joy in it and you can laugh through it, it's good for the bones, it's good for the marrow, it's good internally. It heal, like, like when you know how you might be mad at something. That's like Mike and I, we used to get mad, like real mad at each other, like just mad, and then one of us would do something silly, and then you just bust out laughing, and then it's like your body relaxes and you can even get back to mad, because it's
Yep.
like, I
What
ain't
was
even
we
messing with you.
arguing about? Right. Yep. Happens all the time with between me and my husband. But as we wrap up, I want to remind everyone that when you are in that storm,
Mm,
right, don't look for the easy way out. Change the conversation in your mind, change the conversation you have with God, and say, God, what is the lesson in this? What do you need me to say and hear and receive and do in this moment? I want to leave a scripture that got me through some tough times. It's Romans 8:18, and it says, what we suffer now is nothing compared to the glory he will reveal.
mm,
So what we suffer now is nothing compared to the glory he will reveal. So understand that right now, in the midst of that storm, the glory, the rainbow, the freedom, the carefree,
mm,
the joy will be revealed. It's just a matter of us holding on and riding the wave and saying, okay, we in the boat with Jesus right now. And we gonna let him sleep. We gonna let him rest, because we know once he wakes, it's gonna be calm.
mm, mm,
It's calm while we're in it.
mm.
It's calm while we're in it. Because right now, we're not going through. discomfort. We're not going through the trial, we're growing through the discomfort.
That's good. I gotta add that one. Romans 8:18.
8:18, that's it. That one got me through some tough times, especially with my second pregnancy. It was like, "Okay, God, what's happening?" And I found that scripture, and I was like, that was the one that I held on to, still do.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Wow.
Well, thank you as always for joining me for A Beautiful Life, and we will see you next week.
Thank you. This was great. This was wonderful. Thank you. See y'all
Thanks.
next week.
See y'all later. Have a great evening, beautifuls.
Thank you.
Bye.